And we are back with another episode of the Kyle Lanslone Show. And I am very excited today to be joined by Dave Smith, the great comedian and political commenter, one of just the great debaters that we have right now representing all of the libertarian and non-interventionist viewpoints. So Dave, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm good, Kyle. Thank you so much for having me, brother, and I appreciate the kind words. Always a pleasure to talk with you, and I'm a big fan of your work and the show.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I, of course, am a longtime listener of Part of the Problem, Dave's show with Robbie Bernstein. And so, Dave, I got quite a bit I want to try to talk to you about today. Hopefully, we could get through all of it. First off, is Trump turning into an emperor? What happened to American support? Right-wing support for Israel, and particularly hammering in on this battle that you seem to be in on the right between, are we going to go the direction of America first and Israel first? And if we got time, your overall thoughts on Trump. So, Dave, some of the big stories, the big headlines right now are surrounding Trump federalizing the Metropolitan DC police force and then sending 800 National Guard troops to the streets of DC. There's a lot of rhetoric around this, and I have this clip from Benny Johnson I want to play for you and get your thoughts.
Sure.
President Trump is doing God's work by refederalizing DC. By the way, DC was set up as a federal city. It's in the Constitution. It's how our founding fathers intended it. These laws are still fully enforceable. They've never been rescinded or amended. President Trump and the executive, through the House of Representatives, controls Washington, D.C. And so what President Trump is doing is reasserting control of not only our nation's capital, but truly the seat of Western civilization. It must be preserved because the peoples of Earth come here by the millions per year in order to witness the success or failures of our systems. Washington, D.C. must be swept clean. I believe entire neighborhoods probably need to be emptied, need to be bulldozed. I believe that there are places that are so crime-ridden and so infested that you just need to, you're just going to have to crack down. You're going to have to do the job, and you're going to have to get the crime out of Washington. That's my personal experience. Don't believe the bullshit that you hear online from some reporters. Oh, crime's down in D.C. Well, D.C. is not safe. And I can tell you this, as a matter of fact, it is one of the worst, most racist narco states and welfare states imaginable.
So, Dave, this is, he made some bold statements in there, but there's a lot of debate around this. Do you think this is Trump acting as an authoritarian or just doing some necessary police work?
Well, I mean, look, if Washington, D.C. is running something, I'm sure it'll be managed effectively. That we've learned that lesson time and time again. I'm just thinking, as you play this clip, I hadn't seen that clip before, but it is funny that Donald Trump was the president of the United States throughout the summer of 2020. He throughout the longest sustained riots in modern American history, Donald Trump was the president, and he didn't do anything like this as a response then. And even in the years like 2016 or whatever, where there really was 2017, 2018, there was Antifa and Black Bloc, and it was a real thing that kind of no one right of center could even hold a political, event without thugs messing with it. And he never did anything about that. And I don't know, as I think about this, it's so interesting that kind of the central promise of Donald Trump's political existence, Donald Trump's political raison d'etre, was always to drain the swamp. It was always it was always about the corrupt people in Washington, D.C. and they hate me because I represent you, but we're going to get them. And it was lock her up. And of course, this time around, they ran on releasing Epstein files and all this stuff. Kash Patel, all these guys always talking about how they're going to prosecute the criminals in D.C. who have betrayed the American people. But once it comes to fruition, the power of the government is always used, of course, against the people and not against the powerful who have betrayed the people. And, we have major problems in cities across the country, but Benny Johnson may want to dismiss it. I think if you actually look at the numbers, crime in Washington, D.C. is down from its post-COVID high, but is probably still higher than pre-COVID crime levels. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check that. But it's not as if there is some crisis that Donald Trump can point to justify this, that it's like, oh, well, here's the crisis. Like, again, like in the summer of 2020, however you would have felt about the move, you could have at least understood if someone was saying, hey, there's billions of dollars in property damage being done right now and people are terrorized. But there's nothing even like that. And while it comes as the administration is failing on everything else, it seems to me like it's just like a distraction. At least get back like I'm the law and order president or something like that. But I doubt it's going to make any difference in a positive way in anyone's life. That's my guess.
So, do you anticipate that this could be a part of a larger sweeping policy where he's going to deploy, National Guard or federalized police forces in other cities? I'm thinking of like New York City. He's particularly even mentioned Chicago as he was announcing the one to Washington, D.C. And I also just found this interesting. My producer actually pointed out to me that Benny Johnson just isn't, sitting behind his desk in his mama's basement here. He's actually been hanging around the White House in recent days and a part of their press conferences around this. So, I think he's acting as a semi-official spokesman here as much as just a political commentator.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to view things. And look, who knows, like but even if that's not intentional, like even if they're not consciously going, we're going to run this experiment in DC and then see if we could expand it to other areas. Of course, as you know well, Kyle, when you're talking about any large institution, but particularly a government, it doesn't really matter whether that's your intention or not. That's certainly how other people are going to view this. And the businesses, entities in general, are always looking to grow their power. And the government doesn't have to do it voluntarily. They do it by force. So certainly you could see politicians in the future or even within this administration thinking, hey, all right, we just did this here. Now let's bring it somewhere else. I mean, that just means more power for the federal government, more funding for the federal government. And as people who are, students of American history know, essentially the entire history of the United States of America has been the federal government usurping more and more power from the states, where most of the power was vested by the framers. And there's a reason for that. And, it's this is a huge part of every disaster that the United States of America is currently facing is a result of that exact dichotomy, where the federal government is taking more and more power. And this is true whether you look at, immigration or money or war. This is a big part of what the Defend the Guard movement is all about. It's true when you look at education and it's true with policing as well. It's already the case. The federal government has been way too involved in policing, which is supposed to be a state issue to begin with. This is how you've gotten the military equipment for local police stations, and this is how you've gotten mandatory minimums for the war on drugs. And of course, it's just been a catastrophe every time it's tried. But if the 20th and 21st century haven't shown us anything, is that won't stop government officials from continuing to try.
Yeah. So, Dave, the next thing I wanted to ask you about is this really huge thing that I think is going on in the American culture. There's a real battle here on the American right, whether they're going to prioritize Israel or whether this is going to be American first. And I don't even know if you would consider yourself on the right, but you certainly have influence and have discussions with people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. And certainly, I believe you've had a lot of influence, in my perspective, in the right way on this debate. But the attacks against, Tucker and Candace continue to heat up in other people on the right. Marjorie Taylor Greene was attacked by APAP, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So Ted Cruz is going after Tucker Carlson. There's this new video out of Tucker Carlson, all the times that he's mentioned the state of Israel since his interview with Ted Cruz, as if this is supposed to, reflect something bad. I'm just wondering your assessment right now on who's winning this argument, Dave. Do you think that the people who are pushing for the U.S. to at least have a normal relationship with Israel, where we're not giving them endless amount of aids and signing off on a genocide, are winning here? Or, what's your assessment?
Well, that all depends on how you define winning now, Kyle. I mean, if we're talking about winning the political power, or winning the donor class, or winning the arms manufacturers or something like that, then nothing has changed. You know, we're still losing that game in the exact same way that we always were. But if you're talking about winning over the people, I mean, honestly, from my perspective, it's over. It's done and it's been won. I mean, there's, you know, I've been around long enough that I think I'm like kind of good at gauging these things. Not that it's that hard to gauge, but you can kind of tell like when a debate is over, you know, like it's like right now, like the debate about like wokeism or like transing kids. That debate is over. We're not like still in that debate. It's just been rejected by the people. And then the question is, are the politicians, do they react to that or do they care about that? But I think it's just, look, I can feel it. I feel it every time that I debate one of these neocon types. It's just the whole crowd is like, you know, we're done with this. This is just, it's been totally rejected. And if you look at even say like I mean, if you just think about like how relevant Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens or people like that are. And then you go, and what are we talking about? Mark Levin or something, you know, like let them, nobody's like, he's not moving the conversation or now he's still maybe having lunches with Donald Trump and convincing him to, you know, put no enrichment into the negotiations or whatever. But like, there's just no question, like the writing's all over the wall. And I think it's as simple as U.S. support for Israel always relied on a completely controlled media. And it's kind of the only way that you can generate this type of mass support for that stuff is if people are just so horribly uninformed. It's like every time you ever talk to, you know, someone like your dad's age or something like that who supports Israel, it's always just because they have none of the information. Like if you only had the information they had, you'd probably feel the same way. You're like, what? There's this nice little country that they exist. And for that, all these surrounding crazy terrorists try to kill them. So like, whose side are you on? And I guess you'd be like, yeah, I'm on the side of those guys, I guess. But once you get even a little bit of the story, this just completely falls apart. And you know, there's been a massive, massive change in the way Israel's viewed. And I think I play a small part in that. I'm kind of in that world, but the really big ones, I think obviously it's been Tucker Carlson, it's been Joe Rogan, it's been Candace Owens, and I gotta say, I think a really huge one is Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan essentially, even when he was bad on the issue, he just allowed the debate to happen in front of a huge audience in a way that there's been so many Israel-Palestine debates on that show, and just time after time after time, the critics of Israel are just wrecking the Zionists. And I think that this really had an impact. I think the stuff I've done has hopefully had some degree of an impact, the debates and stuff like that, and kind of just demonstrating really how, I mean, say it in a nice way, but how pathetic so many of the arguments for that the Warhawks have are. And, you know, their knock on me, they'll always be like, well, Dave's just a comedian. He's not an expert and he doesn't know what he's talking about. But like, that just feeds into my entire point. My entire point the whole time has always been like, I know I'm not, and I can still chew up and spit out your best guy on this because they just have nothing, you know? And then I will say that, look, even as much as people might hesitate to credit him, Nick Fuentes has also been a part of this. And guys like Andrew Tate and people who are in their, you know, in our world, they may seem like they're in a different corner of the internet than us, but these are guys with enormous followings and like essentially, and then of course across the left wing, all these guys are critical of the war. So like all the young people who don't listen to the controlled corporate media anymore and listen to podcasts and internet shows and you know, influencers, they're just all across the board, all the most popular ones are just calling this thing out for what it is.
No, all fantastic points there. I know just among my more normie friend group, people like Theo Vaughn or Tim Dillon are people that, you know, they're not even listening to for politics. They're just listening to like as a late night show or something like that, something to do, something to watch. And now Theo Vaughn is interviewing a doctor from Gaza. I mean, this is just so in everybody's face. It's really shifting quite. The only thing it really reminds me of in my lifetime is how fast the moral issue changed around gay rights and gay marriage. When I was in high school, I went in as a freshman and it was, you know, gay was bad. And, when it came out, gay marriage was, I think, being legalized across the country. And so
it's a good comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't seem to be affecting our political class yet. This is what our House Speaker Mike Johnson did and had to say right after he adjourned Congress early.
We're here with a delegation of members of the House, but it is such a moving time for us to be here at the Wailing Wall. We've offered our prayers, we put our notes into the wall as just traditional, and we're so moved by the hospitality of the people and the great love of Israel. Our prayer is that America will always stand with Israel, and that we will we pray for the preservation and the peace of Jerusalem. That's what Scripture tells us to do. It's a matter of faith for us and a commitment that we have. We're here with a delegation of members of the House.
So, Dave, he adjourned Congress early to avoid a vote on the Epstein files and then ran off to Israel and prayed at a wall. And this is supposed to be the American First movement. So I guess my question is mostly, what the hell? How do they get away with this?
Well, I don't know. We're really running this new experiment where the regime is running without a propaganda apparatus. And I guess we're going to find out how necessary that propaganda apparatus was, or what exactly that looks like when they're running without it. It feels to me, and this is the analogy that I've been on for the last few days, but like, if you remember after Joe Biden's catastrophic debate performance against Donald Trump, where everyone knew, moments into that debate, that Joe Biden would have to drop out after this, that there was no way he was going to recover from this. Even the hacks in the corporate media had to admit it after the debate. And part of the reason that you knew he couldn't recover from that was not just how bad that night was, but you knew that now every move Joe Biden makes is going to be under a microscope, and you can't pretend it's not there anymore. Like, you have to admit that it's at least an issue. And then it's like, a couple days before the debate, if Joe Biden had confused, someone's name for someone else, it may not have been the biggest deal in the world. But the day after the debate, if he did that, it was like, oh my God, more proof of this. And I feel in a similar way, like the U.S.-Israel relationship, much like Joe Biden, can't exist once people are looking for it, because now that this is the number one political topic, like this dynamic of the U.S.-Israel relationship, now people got to look back at this, and you see these things that like your parents maybe just took as a given. Yeah, that's what politicians do. They go and cry at the wall and talk about how their number one priority in life is Israel. But now that everyone's examining it, it's just too much for people to not go like, yo, what is going on here? Wait, what? It's so bizarre on the face of it. Like, people from this government have to go over and cry and worship this country? It's just too... So, I don't know. It's shocking to me that they kind of can't reel this back in. You would think if the political class was agile and was able to deal with the new environment, that they'd go, let's not send a bunch of congressmen to go kiss the wall right now. That actually looks bad for our side. But then again, you'd think they might be able to go, let's not send Rabbi Shmuley and Alan Dershowitz out as our representatives. But they can't seem to figure out how to do that either. So I don't know how they keep getting away with this, but I look at this and go, I don't think they can for much longer.
Well, I certainly hope so, because they are really getting absolutely insane. And actually, what's going on here is a great way to describe this next clip. This is actually Adam King on TimCast explaining that Israeli settlers in the West Bank recently carried out a red heifer ritual. And this is his analysis. This is what he's telling the TimCast audience.
About a month ago on July 1st, there was an announcement that they were going to do a practice run of the red heifer. We're just going to do a practice one with one of the 5 disqualified cows. The government said, okay, whatever. They ended up going out, doing a real cow. One of the cow's name was Tikva. They made the offering, and it was a real offering. They did it all by the laws. And I have with me some of the ashes right here The last time that the red heifer was done was over 2,000 years ago. They successfully performed the ritual about a month ago. Now, in the ritual, you're supposed to have hyssop. I have also hyssop that is from the actual ritual, and also the red heifer ashes. And these get put into a clay jar and then sprinkled on people in a healing ritual. They have been sprinkling on people. There was a man with Alzheimer's who just started remembering everything, sight to the blind. There's some real miracles that have happened in the last month since this thing has gone down. So these are the slides of the actual ceremony being taken place, and that's tikva. And everything was done specifically according to halacha, which is Jewish law. Mm-hmm. It was a perfect cow, and meaning that it doesn't have a single hair that is not red. And now that it's been done, the Messiah can come. We can't build the temple until this happened. And now that this happened, the Messiah can come build the third temple in Jerusalem.
So, Dave, I know he sounds absolutely crazy, but this is what, Ted Cruz and others, Mike Huckabee, Mike Johnson, talk about when, Israel has their religious claim to all of Palestine, and that this is all about, bringing about the end times. And so what do you make of this? Do you think the American right is going to buy onto this and see this as something we want to be a part of?
I mean, personally, I'm going to need to see a little bit more evidence on these miracles that have taken place so far. I'd really like to hear from some of the doctors of this Alzheimer's patient that was cured. Man, I don't know. For some reason, the only thing I get, I never liked the new atheists. Like Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris and those guys. I just never liked the whole new atheism thing. I always found it like smug and condescending and elitist and just not quite as impressive as they thought they were being with their arguments. But man, if there was ever a need for them to exist, wouldn't it be this right here? Like where are, okay, Christopher Hitchens is dead. Where's Sam Harris to weigh in on this? How do you feel about that, Mr. Atheist? It is what's so interesting to me. Of course, you'll have the right-wingers who are always talking about Islam is taking over America or something like that. But I do find it interesting that in terms of people who have any type of political relevance or like any type of movement that's somewhat relevant over politics, including the pro-life movement, there is no movement that presents ideas like this other than Zionists. Like there's nobody, even the pro-lifers never just present their argument as like, God says we can't do it. They know they got to get down there and actually make an argument and go, hey, that's a baby. You can detect a heartbeat at 6 weeks. You can detect this. They recoil from pain. Like they got to use some type of science in their argument. It's only the Zionists who get to just sit here and go, our book says so. And God tells you that you have to, down to the point, like I'm saying, like down where United States senators will show up on the #1 right-wing show and sit here and say, oh no, it's right here in the Bible. I can't tell you which part, but it's in there. And when you think about the fact that this type of logic is what's being used to justify the images that we see in Gaza every day, as you really do, like it feels almost like what would I with that guy if you were trying to debate him or something? Not that I'd suggest wasting your time, but doesn't it almost feel like you're like, well, why don't you go debate an Aztec high priest on child sacrifice? Why don't you go debate them? It's like You're just having a different conversation than they are. And you'd be like, hey, this is like killing children. You can't do this. And he'd be like, it pleases the gods. So of course we can. Like, that's just, I don't know. Who else talks like this in a modern advanced society?
Well, there is one person, and that is Lindsey Graham. And I kind of want to play this clip for you, Ned Stave, because while, Benny Johnson and the people in the alternative media who are pro-Israel are directed at one audience, Lindsey Graham is still a part of that old establishment mainstream complex talking to the older Americans. So this is what Lindsey Graham has to say.
But tonight, it's late at night, Israel is in a fight for their lives. Our friends in Israel are surrounded by people who would kill them all if they could. I am tired of the word genocide. Let me tell you about genocide. If Israel wanted to commit genocide, they could. They have the capability to do that. They choose not to. Hamas, they would commit genocide in 30 seconds. They just can't. And that's the big difference, folks. To people in my party, I'm tired of this crap. Israel is our friend. They're the most reliable friend we have in the Mideast. They're a democracy, surrounded by people who would cut their throats if they could. This is not a hard choice if you're an American. It's not a hard choice if you're a Christian. A word of warning. If America pulls the plug on Israel, God will pull the plug on us.
So Dave, what do you think? Is our country on life support connected to Israel?
Let's just imagine the world you like genuinely, if you believed in your heart that if we pull the plug on Israel, God will pull. So your conception of the world is that God prefers Israel to us. And so then I guess, I mean, like, what are you saying? That you're openly saying, like, well, if we were to pull the plug on them, God would pull the plug on us. So I guess our role, according to God, is to serve Israel. Are you saying that out loud as a U.S. senator? And I don't know. I mean, look, it's just, I guess really it's just a testament to what he thinks he can still get away with the 80-year-olds who listen to him or something like that. But I think every sentence of that was a lie. Like, I don't think there was one, and even positioning it for anyone who knows anything about it, they don't have to be as deep in this as you are, Kyle. But like, you're like, Israel's surrounded by people who want to kill them. Like, didn't Donald Trump just go on a big tour of that region and meet with like everybody around Israel? Like, I don't know. Weren't the Jordanians shooting down Iranian missiles coming at Israel? Like, is it true that everyone around them wants, like, we have nothing but U.S. sock puppets surrounding Israel. And of course, the very few examples that aren't those are the places Israel's bombing in the last 2 years. Literally, where's Israel bombed in the last 2 years? I think they've destroyed Gaza, bombed the West Bank, they bombed Lebanon, they bombed Yemen, they bombed Syria, they bombed Iran. They've bombed 6 of their neighbors in the last year. Those are the non-U.S. sock puppets. Everyone else is U.S. sock puppets. It's just the ones that Israel's bombing that aren't. And, you know, the idea that like Israel is in the fight, again, it's just like this crazy framing that as Gaza has been destroyed, the whole time, people like Lindsey Graham ask, does Israel have the right to exist? You know, isn't there something just so, you can't even believe it when you say it out loud. But like, while you're destroying another, the question of whether Gaza has a right to exist, which would seem like a more relevant one, seeing as how it got destroyed in the last 2 years, the whole time they've said Israel's in the fight for its life. Israel, it's like, I don't know, objectively speaking, Gaza's right to exist is what's been violated, and the Palestinians in Gaza have been in a fight for their lives, and Israel just has not. But again, I guess the thing that's just encouraging to me, which is kind of on the same topic that I said earlier, is just like, this is all they have. All they have is like, this is something, it's really it's blown me away because, you know, over the last few years, as I've kind of gotten ready for debates with Dennis Prager and Douglas Murray and like, you know, some other fairly high profile guys, I'm always kind of like, man, I wonder what they're going to come at me with here. Like, what are they going to say? Maybe they'll say something I haven't thought of yet. You know, maybe they have an argument I haven't considered. And then every time, all they have is slogans like this. Like, this is all they have. And if you know anything about the situation, it's fairly easy to just point out how all these slogans are lies. But anyway, I guess part of that, I just look at that and I go, man, they really will not be able to win when they actually have to compete for the younger generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, I mean, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely, man.
Watched tons of your debates, and it is always amazing with how little they have. I remember after Scott Horton destroyed Bill Kristol, I was like, oh my God, this is a murder. But maybe, you know, Bill Kristol's just old now, and you know, you and Scott too with subsequent debates have proven that no, he really represents the higher level of thinking among
He's still their best and brightest, Kyle. It turns out that was all they had.
Yeah, him and Jennifer Rubin. So anyways, everybody, if I've seen Dave do stand up several times. His comedy's fantastic. So if Dave's in an area near you, I definitely recommend you go and check out one of his stand up shows. And of course, Part of the Problem, fantastic show. I've been listening, I don't know, years and years and years, Dave. And so it's a real honor to have you here today. And thanks for your time.
Dude, thank you so much. Let's do it again real soon, man.
It sounds good. Thanks, Dave.